Hey guys, welcome to this video. My name is Olive. So in this video we are going to be going through the different props that we have in yoga and how we can use them in our home practice or maybe in a studio. So some of the props that we're going to be going through, we're going to have a look at the brick, we're going to have a look at the pancake kind of block, having a look at a strap as well, and then finally a bolster. So first off, why do we use props? I feel like in the yoga world, props are sometimes seen as a crutch and they're seen as almost like a regression into your pose, and just like straight off the bat, that's not true at all. I think there's a lot to say for props. They can help you bring so much awareness of the pose that you're going into without sometimes worrying about the depth. They can teach you so much about muscular awareness in terms of what muscles to activate. They can also just teach you a little bit more about alignment, and they can make quite intimidating poses sometimes less intimidating because you learn to work there at your own pace with the help and assistance of things. As well as that, they can also be used for relaxation, they can also be used for deeper assistance and just more support. So without further ado, let's have a look at see how we can use them. The first prop we're going to have a look at is the brick, and I'm going to cover some poses from standing down to seated and how we can make use of the brick in these poses. So the first one we're going to have a look at is triangle pose, otherwise known as Trikanasana if the teacher calls it by Sanskrit. So the pose traditionally would look something a little bit like this. Maybe the hand rests on the inside of the leg, slightly higher up, or maybe there's a bind around the toe. Now, the way that we can utilize a prop is by bringing it to where the hand would go down and instead resting it on there and finding ourselves in Trikanasana. So the thing as well with this and why this prop is so useful is that you can adjust the height depending on how high you want to go, how low you want to go, and just sort of tapping into your body's like connection and awareness a bit more. So if I feel like I'm pretty comfortable here, maybe I take it down a notch and place it on the second level. If I still feel pretty comfortable, maybe I take it down a notch again and come to the final level. Obviously throughout the whole process you know your body the best, so you listen to your breath, you listen to your body, and you adjust as and when. So that's one standing pose. Another one that we can have a look at is forward fold. So obviously forward folds, the bane of a lot of people's practice. Tight hamstrings is usually the main sort of like reason why. The way you can help yourself with a forward fold, obviously, again, sort of traditionally, we'd come down here, hands would land, and we would fold. If you feel like the hamstrings are squealing too much and you don't want to necessarily bend the legs, there's obviously nothing wrong with that. What you can do instead is, again, start on the highest setting, place the hands down, and just gently start to bring the chin to the chest, folding as much as you would like. Just having the hands a little bit higher off the ground can help. Of course, bend the knees if you need, and as time goes on, maybe you take it down to level 2, maybe you take it down to level 3. But on the other end of the spectrum, we can also use this to maybe progress in a different kind of way. If you feel like you want to develop or you want to explore maybe a deeper kind of stretch into your hamstrings and your posterior chain, all you got to do is stand on your block and then come into the forward fold. So this is actually particularly useful, a particular useful way to practice with the block. If you are working on things like handstand presses, you start to learn this real compression in the lower body, in the upper body, and still really push through the hands. So the block can be used to assist with a forward fold in terms of learning how to tilt and get yourself maybe deeper, but also get beyond that range. So two different ways you can use it. So when it comes to doing standing balances poses, I feel like blocks are super useful. Obviously when we are balancing on one leg, it's really easy to get thrown off and feel like super wobbly, particularly when we come into a pose called half moon or Ardha Chandrasana. So half moon looks like this. Slowly sort of creating external rotation in the back hip. Either the fingertips are or the flat hand onto the ground, and we open up through the top hand. So it's a challenging pose because you're not only balancing on one leg, but you're creating this external rotation. So sometimes it's very likely that you fall off one way. One way to progress into this pose is again by having the block there as an extension of your hand. So the block would be down, you place your hand on it, and then you slowly come up into the pose. I'm gonna wobble. And then slowly bring yourself up here. Again, you determine, do I want to take it lower? Do I want to keep it where it is? And you just explore. But it's a pretty interesting way to learn the alignment and not worry too much about just falling straight out of it and sort of creating this narrative in your head that you can't do something, because you can. So also with this, it's quite interesting to maybe explore a little lift. You can start to slowly remove the hand and see if you can hold it there, because that way you're coming into the more active approach to the pose and developing more muscular and joint awareness. Cool. So final way that we can use this in terms of balance, and I like to pop this little drill in when we're learning sort of balances in my classes, and just to get better at them as well. It's not necessarily yoga, but you can use the props in so many ways. You just stand on it with one foot. My feet are quite small, so they fit onto the block quite nicely. You might have bigger feet and grip down. But basically you just stand on the block, let that other foot hover, and then just start taking it in loads of different places. You could go super low, you can go super high, you can bend a little bit more, maybe even swap onto the other leg and do the same sort of thing. And if you feel super brave, maybe you close your eyes. But the idea is that whilst you're balancing on the block, you improve your proprioception, and you also train your body and your brain, because now you're elevated off the ground. Your brain has to work a lot harder, as do all the intricate muscles and tendons and ligaments in your foot. So they're going to work to really try keep you grounded. So that translates to then when you come onto the floor, your feet work even harder because they've learned how to do it. Cool. So coming into some more seated or floor-based poses, we can use a block for a pigeon pose. Now, pigeon, again, it looks a little bit like this. One leg is in front, the other leg is extended behind, and sometimes the butt cheek of the leg in the front is off the ground. So we can use support by taking the brick, and putting it under our butt cheek. Now this is where we can start to make use of the pancake block as well. This is sometimes quite nice to use because it's a little bit flatter and it can slot underneath quite comfortably. Because usually the other ones are quite chunky and high and they can almost throw us out of our alignment, whereas a flatter pancake block just fits in quite nicely. So this is one way that we can explore pigeon and maybe even come down onto our forearms as well. I would say that the pancake block is nicer for more floor-based work because it is flatter, and like I said, it doesn't throw you out of alignment as much, whereas the brick is nicer for standing poses like the single leg balances, like our Trikanasana, because it's more sturdy, it's more chunky, and it's more likely to be able to support you. So with that, we're going to swap more into this work. Another floor-based pose that you can use, where the pancake brick is quite lovely to assist, is Shavasana or head to knee pose. So my body is quite open in the sense that I don't necessarily need a block, but obviously sometimes I might want to use it, and in this pose in particular, having the block underneath the knee can just help with a little bit more assistance. With any kind of hip opener like this, where we're opening through the hips and knee is drawing to the ground, we want to do it safely so we don't just stretch our hip ligaments. We want to make sure there's muscular activation, inner, outer thigh and glutes. And this block can be so helpful to do so. It's not only there to support the knee, but it's also there as a reminder to really try press down into that block so you activate those muscles a hell of a lot more and make your practice a little bit more sustainable. So yeah, and then you can come into the forward fold however it is. Lovely. So coming down into a more supine pose. This is quite a nice restorative option to take, and we're going to come back to the chunky brick because, like I said before, it's more supportive, which is what we need, rather than having a little bit more of a flimsy kind of prop. So if we wanted to practice little bridge or low bridge, what that would look like without a prop, we lift up, we engage your glutes, we press through to the heels. If you wanted to make it a little bit more restorative, you take it on the nice long flat edge first. You lift up and you find that flat bit off your spine just before your butt, so your sacrum, and then just gently let it land down onto the block. But we don't, it's super important to remember that the blocks aren't there to take our body weight. They are there to obviously offer support, but we still have to be active. So even though I'm seemingly resting here, I'm still driving into my legs, I'm still engaging my glutes, I'm still bracing through my core. It's just there as a little bit of support. So yeah, that's obviously quite a nice option to do as well. It's slightly more restorative. But if you wanted to sort of learn a little bit more about correct engagement into the body in this pose, because it's not just glutes that we need to switch on, it's again hamstrings, adductors and abductors. What you would do, take the brick, sort of on the thin edge, thin layer, place it in between your knees and squeeze it and hold it. You don't want to squeeze it so much that it would pop if it was a balloon, but you also don't want to hold it too lightly that it will just fall away. You want to make sure you're squeezing and engaging so you feel all those muscles switch on, and then slowly come up into your little bridge and maintain that engagement, because it's so important, and this teaches you so much muscular control, so that when you do progress towards poses like wheel or Urdhva Dhanurasana, where your hands are by your ears and you push your whole body up, your foundations are strong. So we never rush, we always check the foundations are strong first. So that is one way that you can use that for some supine poses. And finally, with a brick, because if you're practicing arm balances, I really appreciate that they can be scary. You can also use a brick for this as well. Sometimes a brick, or sometimes even a pillow. But say we're practicing and learning crow pose. Crow pose without a prop looks like this. And with the use of a prop, we can use it two ways. We can either use it in the front or use it in the back. You pick and choose, you see what works best for you. It's a little bit of trial and error when the prop is in the front. So also just be mindful that you might fall, so have some nice surroundings. But what you're gonna do, as you plant, as you set up, you're going to rest your forehead on the brick. So that's taking your weight. You're really pushing down into it. And then you see if you can slowly start to lift, ooh, wobbly, and come up. Obviously, it might take a couple of attempts to do so, but it's there as a little bit of support. So you can constantly push down into your head and keep the rest of your body elevated. If that doesn't seem right for you, what you can do instead, have the brick behind you. On whatever setting, I'm going to go for the medium one, and you're going to step onto it. Again, a little bit of trial and error to set up first of all, but again, you set up, you squeeze, you engage, and then you see if you can lift the feet away and off the block. The reason why this is quite nice to come into is because you don't have to lift the feet as high from the ground. You've got a little bit more assistance, so it's sometimes a little bit easier to bring yourself into it. So yeah, those are the ways in which we can use our chunky brick and our pancake block. The next prop we're going to have a look at is a strap. So I know that these come in two different ways. You can have a strap like this, which is super long, and it's got kind of got belt buckles at the end, or you can get straps that already have loops either end. Those ones can be a little bit easier sometimes. These are more of a faff. But again, we're going to come back and look at different poses and how we can use straps in them. So the first one we're going to have a look at is a standing balancing pose, quite commonly found in Ashtanga yoga. So this is extended hand to knee pose, or Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana for those who like Sanskrit out there. So with this, I would start by halving it, and we're gonna loop it around our foot. So what the pose looks like without the strap is like this, and then we'll come to the second pose of B, which is extended out to the side. So with the strap, we would loop it around our foot, sort of dividing it in half. Start by maybe holding it about 3/4 of the way down, other hand to the hip, and then slowly elevating it up as high as you want it to go. When you get to your height, you decide if you want to walk the hands lower down the strap or keep them where they are. But again, it teaches you muscle activation. My quads are on, my hip flexors are working, I'm making sure I'm upright in my spine, I'm in neutral, shoulders are in neutral and engaging the bottom leg. And then to come to the next pose, you just simply start to open out to the side. Again, from there you determine, do I want to walk my hands down, or are they cool where they are? And you can play around with the height as well. So yeah, that's one way that we can use a strap in some of our standing balancing poses. So coming down towards the ground into some seated, we can have a look at a forward fold. So again, without the strap, maybe hold either side and continue to fold down. With the strap, you would loop it around your feet. So maybe start with bent legs. Again, sort of dividing it in half. Extend the legs as far as they want to go. And you start by holding wherever, inhaling, then exhale to slowly start to fold. And you basically just start to walk your hands down the strap as low as you want to go. And it's also a constant reminder to keep those legs super active, because you're almost pulling with the strap, but not too much. You don't really want to like pull and launch yourself in. You just want to create that awareness in those muscles to bring you down. Cool. So another way that we can utilize the straps is with binds. Binds are quite complex moves, particularly for the shoulder. There's a lot of internal rotation to external rotation, and sometimes our shoulders just don't move in that way, or our arms are actually quite short, so they can't find the bind. So one way, a bound pose that we can look at is cow face arms. I'm going to turn my back. So cow face arms looks like this. We find the bind between the two fingers. Now, if that feels way too impossible, and of course, understandably so it can, what we can do is take the strap in the top hand, again, maybe divide it in half, come into our sort of starting position, and then with the other hand, find the end of the strap. And then from there, we work out, squeeze shoulder blades together. Maybe you want to start working those hands down the strap and find where you can bring yourself into the most comfortable version. Of course, with this, be mindful not to extend too much in the spine. Try keep a neutral position. But that's quite a nice way to practice those binds and just get used to the shoulder mechanics and where you're at without forcing yourself there and doing like more damage to the shoulder, because I've done that in the past. Right, so another bind that we can look at, we can have a look at Marichyasana, I think it's A, Marichyasana A. So again, traditionally, this pose would start like this. If you wanted to bring yourself into the bind, wrap around that knee, you hear that shoulder click? Not good. And then the other hand would meet. So it's quite difficult to stay into. It's a very deep twist. The legs have to be very active. Shoulders are going through quite a lot. So similarly, like we did before, divide the strap in half. I would say maybe put it into the hand that's going over the knee. So a little bit of a faff, you've got to set up fairly well. So kind of wrap it around the legs and then see if the other hand can wrap round and meet. Like I said, it is a faff, so it might take trial and error to actually like find it and bring it into the movement. But essentially, when you are there, you start to walk the hands down just as you did before. I want to show you from a different angle so you can see me faffing about with my hands. I'm going to start with my back hand around and then loop and then see if I can find. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So that's just one bind that you can have in a seated pose. Finally, let's come down to some supine poses again. So do you remember the standing balance we did, Utthita Hasta, where we extended the leg, then opened it out? There's a very similar one that we do on our back. So again, the posture without the strap would look like this, and then like this. With the strap, again, divide it in half or however long you want it to be. Leg is extended, you hold it with one hand, and then again, you lift up, you draw in, decide, do I want to work the hands down to come to the next pose, slowly, slowly extend away. Again, work the hands down the strap and see where you end up. Cool. So that's how we can make use of those straps in some poses. It's obviously not as common as the bricks. There's not as much you can do with a strap, but there are definitely ways in which you can use it to just make your practice a little bit more comfortable and learn about different postures and learn about the muscle joint activation. Final prop we're going to look at is the bolster. This is like arguably my favorite prop because it means relaxation. Usually you find this in like restorative or yin or pre-postnatal classes. So the bolster, we can use this in a couple different ways, and it's mainly for like seated or supine poses. So sitting, first of all, if we're taking a more restorative approach to say a forward fold, we can put it down our leg, rest our hands, and then slowly sort of round through the spine. If you wanted like a little bit more support, this looks a little bit funny, but it feels good. You sort of put it down one base on the legs, and then the other base, you just rest your forehead on it and you fold. You can also do this in like a straddle position, or even a butterfly position as well, or even like this. So yeah, there's loads of different ways that you can use it in seated. Obviously it just depends on what you're after, what you would like assistance from the bolster for. But the main and the juicy bit, Shavasana. When we come down to lie on our back, mainly at the start of class, at the end of class, we can use a bolster for this just to find that like extra little bit of comfort. So one way, instead of lying flat on our back, we can place the base of the bolster just sort of above our lumbar spine, and then slowly let ourselves come down. So we have this lovely extension in the spine. You might need to wriggle and round and find sort of a comfortable position. And you release the hands, and then you can just lie here for however long your Shavasana is. And it's super lovely. It just again encourages this lift into the chest, into the lungs, the diaphragm, the heart space, and you get quite a nice opening towards your pecs. But if that isn't for you, another way that you can find the bolster or make use of it is by placing it underneath your knees. I'm one of those people, I get really uncomfortable lying flat on my back, particularly in Shavasana. So this really helps. By just propping up your knees, you take some of the pressure out of your lumbar spine. So underneath the knees, hands by your side, and then again, chilling out, relaxing, maxing all cool, shooting some, sorry, Will Smith. Anyways, one more way that we can use a bolster if you wanted to take a more restorative approach to, say, shoulder stand. So shoulder stand, pose like this. Sometimes not always the most comfortable for your neck and for your breathing. What you can do instead, bolster goes underneath your bum. So again, figure out about the bit where your bum and your low back meet, and then just elevate those feet. In principle, these two poses do exactly the same thing. Both are sort of elevating the legs with gravity, so lymph systems can sort of like drain excess blood, so on and so forth. Only difference with this, there's no pressure onto the neck. So this is one way to do it. You can also make use of a wall here. Maybe a wall is directly behind your feet and you can rest them there. Yeah, so that is one way that we can practice shoulder stand. If you also wanted a slightly different approach to shoulder stand and add a little bit more pressure to your back, this one you might need assistance from a teacher or whoever around, or maybe try it my way. What you're going to do, have those legs straight and put the bolster sort of on your feet, and what that does is add a little bit of pressure so your lumbar spine comes more into contact with the ground. It's obviously quite nice to do, but just be mindful that you're not going to break anything if you accidentally drop it. Cool. So those are some of those ways in which we can use props from our brick, our pancake, our strap, and our bolster. Obviously there are so many other props out there, and if you don't have certain ones, like for the bricks and the blocks, you can use chunky books, you can use thin books. For a strap, you could use a scarf, you could use a tie. For a bolster, what you can do, you can get a pillow and like divide it in half and tie it up, or just find another pillow, or maybe even a thick blanket that you roll up a couple of times, because I appreciate that not everyone has these to hand. I only do because I'm a yoga teacher. But yeah, those are some ways in which we can use our props. So if you had any further questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section and I will help you out. But yeah, main thing to remember, props are not crutches. They are there to help you. They are there to like allow you to progress in your practice, and they shouldn't be shamed. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.